This
Okay,
conference will now be recorded.
good morning, Tarrant County Unity Council, Communication Education Committee. We're going to go ahead and get started this morning. I'm sure a couple of people will continue to trickle in as the meeting goes on, but since it's 10:05, we'll go ahead and jump things off. So, in today's meeting, we'll go over we'll have a little recap of what went on in the last meeting. We'll take a little bit of a look back at our communication and education indicators. And actually, before we even jump into things, I do want to go ahead and make the official announcement that the Communication and Education Committee have officially been combined into one committee. And so this decision was based on the time we've been granted within our grant period, as well as the overlap of inequities and barriers between these two sectors. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, again, like I said this morning, we'll take a recap over what happened in the last meeting. We'll look back into our indicators, especially now that we have officially combined them into one committee. We'll take a look at our policy review framework, and then we'll get into our plan recommendations. And then finally, we'll address those community listening sessions that will be starting next month. And then at that point, we'll close up things and address any questions or anything for our next meetings. Okay. So, in our meeting on May 16th, we discussed good and bad. We discussed good versus bad policy and what makes a policy successful. We also took a look at some example policy review frameworks to provide an example of what we could expect um, as we were waiting to complete our policy review framework. I also provided everyone with some equitable policy examples so that we know what kinds of policies and policy revisions we're hoping to make with this work. Next, we defined what an equity indicator is and the purpose they hold in this equity plan. And at that time, we only had communication equity indicators, so we discussed those and what those are supposed to address. And then in our discussion portion of the last meeting, we discussed some ways that we might be able to measure these equity indicators. So I know I sent out an email on Friday, June 16th, with some additional equity indicators listed now that communication and education have been combined. Based on feedback that I received from some of you guys, as well as a collaboration with the other health equity specialists, these are the indicators and measurements at this point. I know I didn't hear from everyone, so if anybody has any additional input, adjustments, or suggestions for equity indicators and measurements, we would love to hear it at this time. And of course, the chat is open, and I'm always available by email. Okay. Hi, Zoe. Welcome in. Nice to see your face. I was just saying that these are our equity indicators listed here. Um, These are the ones that we now have now that we've combined communication and education into one committee. So I know you just kind of jumped on a little bit, but definitely take a little bit of time here to review these. And if you see anything that you feel like we might need to adjust or anything that you might want to add on, Zoe, please definitely let us know. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you. And actually, as we kind of push through into the next few sections here in the presentation, we'll kind of review these indicators as we get into our goals and recommendations. So I won't leave this up, but we will get back into these as we get into the next sections. Okay. All right. So here we have the policy review framework that has been created by the health equity specialists here with Tarrant County Public Health. It has not been completely approved just yet, but this is a comprehensive version of the framework that we will be using as we develop and revise policies. Okay, so we will be applying an equity lens to each section of the policy planning and intervention process while asking ourselves each of the questions in the guiding considerations column. So On the left hand side, you can see the policy review sections, and then on the other side you can see those guiding questions. And so that's just how we kind of plan to guide our way through the policy review process. Okay, and so if anybody ever has any questions about the policy review framework, please reach out to Dr. Wingate, and we will definitely begin using this once it is finally approved. Okay. Okay. And so as we prepare to combine, put everything together into these recommendations, um, we'll be building this plan based off of the indicators and measurements. So we'll be forming these short term, medium term, and long term goals. And so our short term goals will be within the COVID-19 grant timeline. So our grant officially ends on May of 2023. And so we are looking to get an extension, hopefully until at least December of 2023. So at that time, that's when we'll be able to complete those short term goals. The medium and long term goals, they will be far outside of the grant timeline. It'll just depend on how that extension works, how long of an extension we get. Um, so those will definitely be discussed once we know how much of an extension we'll get here. And then, of course, as we form these goals and recommendations, we definitely want to be reminded they will be SMART goals. Of course, we all know what SMART goals are. You know, they need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be attainable or achievable, relevant, and time based. And so, how we kind of want to plan them is we'll have that main goal, which for us, that main goal will be the indicator, and then we'll have a strategy, and then we'll have an objective. Okay, and so their main goal is just that broad primary outcome. The strategy is how we plan to achieve the goal, and then the measure is how we plan to achieve the strategy. And so here are some goals that we've kind of thought out a little bit. We haven't quite put them into the format of the goal, strategy, and then objective, but these are some broken down short, medium, and long-term goals for accessibility, and then we'll also go through the other 5 equity indicators that with short, medium, and long-term goals as well. So I would like for everyone to take a little bit of time to see what we have on the screen here, and if there are any goals that you all feel need to be moved around, please definitely let me know. Or if you all would like to go ahead and start trying to put these in the goal, strategy, and objective format, we can definitely do that as well. We have about 45 minutes, so we have plenty of time to get through some things, or at least to even get started. So any suggestions, anybody see anything, any changes we can make here?
For the short-term goal, I think two of them are very clear: digital communication portals, website accessibility. What do you mean by density of early learning centers? Are we wanting to decrease that density? Are we trying to gauge that density? What does that mean?
So for that one, we definitely want to collect that data. We definitely want to know what the density is. We want to gauge it. So that's why it is a short term goal. I don't feel like it'll take too long for us to figure out where the early learning centers are in our health equity zones. And I actually have already, well, I will be speaking with believe Dr. Ware of the Early Learning Alliance, and she's supposed to be connecting us with some of that information. But yes, that's why it is. Well, that's why I had it as a short term goal. What do you think, Zoe?
Yeah, I think if we're just gauging, that makes sense.
Okay, okay. Did you have any other questions about that? It seems like, I don't know, maybe you feel like it might need to go somewhere else based off of what we might be doing
No,
with
I
it.
think that make it's, and I think that's a good short-term goal because it will help with, I think, gauging the early learning centers, and who's going into the early learning centers will help us gauge if we want to make languages reflective of equity zones. Being in
Right.
communication with those early learning centers first will, I think, assist with understanding those core languages.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I think it's in
And
good.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it's in good order. Proximity to essential services amenities. What does? Can you talk about that goal a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to, it's long term because we know that there are services, but we definitely want to put more services in our equity zones, whether it's grocery stores or just information centers or maybe just small pop-up clinics and things. We definitely want to be building in our equity zone, so not only just gauging what is there, but what can we put there, what do we plan to put in these places that we know lack some of these services. So
Yeah,
we
that's
had it in
definitely a
the,
long-term goal.
okay, okay, good, good, good. Um, let's see. So yeah, we definitely have it in long term just because it's this one. This goal is definitely about putting those services in place.
Hmm.
Hi, Charles. Welcome in.
Hey, hey, hey,
Um,
hey.
we're just going over some goals here. We'll be breaking it down from by each indicator. So we're just in the first indicator, so you haven't missed much here. And we just kind of broken down some short, medium, and long term goals um, for accessibility based off communication and education within Tarrant County. So definitely take a look here and see what you think. If there's anything that you feel might need to be moved around, or if you have any specific questions about why something is where it is, definitely let us know. And while you're looking, I'll just kind of track back a little bit. So these goals are short, medium, and long-term goals, but we definitely will be forming them into SMART goals, and we want to put them in the format of having a large goal, a strategy, and then an objective
Definitely,
for
definitely.
these indicators. So we'll take some time here to kind of, make sure everything is at least in place in regards to short, medium, and long term. And if we have the time, we can definitely begin to kind of format those into the goal, strategy, and objective. Okay, we won't spend too much time here. We'll go ahead and move on to the next one. But of course, the chat is active, so definitely feel free to drop things in the chat. And then, if you do think of anything after the meeting, please feel free to reach out to me by email. Okay, so our next indicator was literacy. Um, and so here are some short, medium, and long term goals in regards to literacy. Yeah, so if there are any questions or if y'all feel like anything needs to maybe be rearranged or removed, please let me know. And I will kind of just explain these a little bit because they're kind of broad. So the short term goals, health literacy, financial literacy, and cultural barriers, these are more, they're short term because it's more about getting the information out there. So ensuring that the information that we do send out is on the third grade reading level because that is the literacy level here in Tarrant County. So ensuring that the information that we send out is on the third grade reading level. Financial literacy, just ensuring that the information is out there so that people can be financially literate, not necessarily the programming behind it, but actually just having the information available to people. Same thing for short term, I mean, for language and cultural barriers. We want to know where these language and cultural barriers exist. So that's why those are short term. But does anybody have any thoughts, any further thoughts about those? It's okay. That's okay. And then for the medium term goals, the pre K enrollment, kindergarten readiness, funding for community based programming, these are also ensuring information. Like, do these children have the information that they need to be kindergarten readiness? Are we promoting the right kind of events to ensure that pre-K enrollment is increasing? And then similar to the long-term goals, I felt like these would be things that might take a little bit longer to affect in our community. So K through 12 literacy, early childhood education, educational attainment level is, and especially jail reentry into society. I feel like during COVID, we've seen a lot of people being released from the jail systems, but not really having the resources that they need to be successful. And part of those resources was their lack of literacy. So we definitely want to make sure we're affecting these areas as well. But I do feel like these might take a little bit longer to actually see anything in place or to see anything, um, take form.
Absolutely.
Charles.
I was curious as we're going through this, in, in understanding that these type of efforts are, especially when you talk about politics, are talking points and are ongoing. My curiosity is, what kind of marketing strategy are we going to use to create the motivators to inspire individuals to pursue, this education?
So we got a couple of things in place. So we will be hosting community listening sessions
Okay.
starting next month. And so I feel like that'll be a way that we kind of promote this plan and get the community more involved here. And hopefully, I'm not sure how things are going there because it's above me, but we are hoping to connect with to collaborate with BIN and the Our Heart Media and
Okay.
utilize them as a platform to help us spread our information and, make sure we're reaching people on different platforms. But again, I know that's something that is currently in the works. They are currently discussing that. I'm not sure where they are in the process, but I know that they're interested in partnering with us and we are interested in partnering with them. So hopefully that partnership happens. But as of now, what we'll be doing in the short term, we will be hosting these community listening sessions starting next month. And we plan to do those throughout this whole grant process just to check in with the community, and
Mhm.
see what resources are being utilized, which ones are not, what do they feel about what we're doing with this process, and hopefully building engagement with what we're doing in the process. So, what do you
Oh,
recommend though?
well, I was thinking about utilizing like the fraternities and sororities in the area as well. And just thinking about my chapter in Arlington, we just did a Father's Day education, and we also did the Juneteenth celebration. So like I know a lot of the members of my chapter in Arlington are pretty well connected to a lot of the city officials and so forth. And so I guess the thought occurred, is that an avenue for us to pursue, not only from a marketing aspect, but from a community support aspect, in bringing in these fraternities and sororities who, part of their agenda is to do and perform community activities such as this.
I don't see why it wouldn't be. I know we have a couple of people on our team that are Greek, so I don't. I definitely don't see that being an issue. I don't know that it's something that we have pursued. Like I'm not Greek, so I know that that wasn't a part of my networking strategy. But I'm never against it. I'm never
Okay,
against it, so I can definitely.
because
You like to put the word out?
yeah, because like for example, I'm a Phi Beta Sigma Greek,
Yes.
and all the chapters who perform community social work, there's an added incentive. We get points for doing work like this in community. So on a larger competitive, as far as marketing, there's a competitive nature to this as well, as far as the motivator. So I think it's something that, once we compile this together and get the full strategic plan together on it, I think it would be beneficial for us to present this to them. And I would definitely be willing to help funnel that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I say, I don't see a problem with it at all. I don't see us, getting any backlash or anything. So yeah, that's on my list. And as we get closer and we begin to make things a little bit more cohesive, yeah, we'll definitely collaborate on how we can push forward
Cool,
with that.
cool, cool.
Thank you for that, Charles. Okay, so we good on literacy, guys? All right, moving on to the next one because we have six indicators here, so we'll keep moving. So the next indicator was mis and disinformation during the era of COVID-19. And I know this is a community equity plan, but at the end of the day, this is also a COVID-19 grant funded equity plan. So we definitely want to make sure that we are tying in COVID. And I do feel like something that we experienced just during COVID was just the amount of information coming to us from so many different platforms. And so when it came down to public health information, people didn't know what sources to trust or, didn't know who was telling the correct information. So we definitely want to tackle this as a part of our equity plan. So for short-term goals, we have periodic surveying and focus groups. We'll have county-sponsored community trainings and seminars, public meetings, and then for the kind of inner organization aspect of it, that one-to-one employer to employee communication as well. What do you all think? Do you all think that everything is in place here as far as goals? Do you feel like anything might need to be expanded into a long term goal? Because this is the only indicator where I don't have any long term goals currently.
I mean, one thing I'll say is I've been with some organizations that have attempted to do public meetings about
Hmm.
informa- mis and disinformation, or they've just tried to do public meetings about goals for something new, and they've had a lot of trouble getting attendance. And I feel like moving it to maybe a medium or long term goal might be more beneficial because it will give us the time to really get the necessary outreach to have meaningful attendance at that public meeting. I feel like if we're too focused on having it as a short term goal, we're not going to have as much community input. Um, and the reactions that we get are not going to be as representative of the people we're trying to reach as if we can make it medium or even long term and really put the effort into making those uh, representative.
Okay, absolutely. No, and that makes perfect sense because as we kind of start to plan these listening sessions, I mean, we've definitely had a little bit of a time trying to gather, and I think we actually wanted to get started on those in June, but just because of we haven't been able to get as much communication as we like or as much feedback as we like. We have had to put you back. So I mean, I can see that happening right here in real time, Zoe. So I definitely agree, and we'll go ahead and make that adjustment here. I took the note to make that adjustment. So what I might do then is I have public meetings as short term. I'll probably move that one to medium term and then move the open forum to long term. I guess my idea with the public meeting was to have allow the information to be presented publicly so that we can build the momentum for the open forums. Does that make sense? So I think that's what I'll do then, just based off of your recommendation, Zoe. Tanya.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, well, I guess it was more so for Zoe, because with the listening sessions right now, like Tanisha was saying, she wanted to have them starting next month. And with this being a month of travel, summertime, everybody is away. What would you, or I guess, what pointers could you give as far as like, since you've already done it before? when hosting these meetings, how do you suggest we try to get people involved?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, just having them as often and as many as at as many different time periods as possible,
Okay.
to get people in a variety. Because if they're all at the same time but different locations, or all at the same location but different times, there's going to be significant populations that are missing out. Um, but yeah, just
Okay.
really varying that, um, is where we've seen the most success, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And I don't think we thought of that. I know we were going to have them in different locations, but I know we're definitely leaning toward having them in the evening time. So maybe to switch it up from time to time, that'll definitely be beneficial too. Okay. All right. Before we move on from this one, does anybody else have any suggestions, adjustments? Alrighty, moving on. We're halfway. Well, no, we're past halfway. All right. So the next one is information dissemination. Um, and just as we kind of formed the goals, as I was writing these out, I did see a little bit of overlap, which I think that's okay that it is a little bit of overlap, but a little bit of overlap in some of these goals. But that just means we got some pretty strong goals then if it's a little bit of overlap. So, does anybody see any changes or anything, or is anything unclear? Anything need to be addressed? Mm,
I mean, I know this falls into your overlap, but I know there was a lot of stuff in the digital marketing with, um, I think you mentioned building digital portals for dissemination of
mhm.
information, and I feel like we should just throw that into here as well, since it's already a
Okay.
short-term goal for something else we're working on, and that's going to be how most people, I think, get their information.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that can definitely be attached on. So yeah, maybe onto that first long term um bullet, the government social media toolkit. So maybe it can be the toolkit and a digital portal.
Hmm.
Okay. 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 Add that on. What else do you all think? I can say something, just as we're here. Um, as I was discussing these with the team, I didn't realize how long it would take to translate information. I had a lot of the translation and like making sure websites are available in the languages that represent our equity zones. I had them as short term goals, but then I was informed that that's a much longer process than I was thinking. So I did move them down to long term. But if you all know, I mean, I know you're with Refugee Services, Zoe. So if you know any ways we might be able to expedite that, I just feel like that's one of our primary communication barriers is the language barriers, especially in Texas. Um, I mean, so if you know anything, any resources that might help us move that up to a medium term goal, that would be great.
Yeah, I think we could definitely help with language interpretation.
Okay, awesome, awesome. We'll definitely collaborate a little further with that on a later date. Okay. What do we think? Everything else in a pretty good space. Don't feel like anything needs to be removed or adjusted. Alrighty. Okay. And now for engagement. And I know we're 5 in at this point, but I do want to remind everyone that these are communication and education goals. So that's why you do see a little bit of stuff that might be regarding students or the education system, just because it is a combination of both. So I just want to reiterate that to everyone. Okay. So yeah, again, these short-term goals here, they're more so just about collecting the data, you know, how many pamphlets and brochures are being picked up at the spaces that we do have available for pamphlets and brochures when we do pass out surveys, how many are being taken. Same thing with emails, who's opening emails, how many of those emails are being responded to. And then for the medium term goals, it's also about collecting data, but it's now about seeing how we can improve the data. So we want those follow up surveys because we see who's doing who's picking up the brochures and pamphlets. And then we want to follow up with them to see what did they get from those brochures and pamphlets. Um, we definitely want to add in some empowerment and mentorship for youth in education. So whether that is in the school system directly or just community based education systems. Charles.
I was another thought popped in my head about the networking aspect and thinking about those who are disadvantaged, not having access, obviously, to Wi-Fi and internet,
Mhm.
and thinking about community partners. Um, I, I wonder if we can set up in a networking capacity, with libraries and other facilities that offer free access to computers and Wi-Fi, as far as the engagement goes. And putting up, pamphlets and so forth in libraries and in facilities that disadvantaged individuals often um, go to.
So let me just confirm that I understand what you're saying. So you're saying form some type of collaborative network with like libraries and community centers.
Yeah, and I thought about that from a recruitment idea we had earlier for MHMR, where we connected with churches and so forth, to get individuals who don't have access to internets to fill out the application, connecting with churches and community partners so that these individuals had a place to go to fill out the application to do all of this to get these jobs. And I wonder if that kind of approach would also work with reaching the same type of demographics that are often left out, providing them some kind of facilitation to engage in these activities.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That's definitely something we can look into. I know, I mean, it's very different than what you're mentioning, but I do know that Fort Worth ISD has a similar kind of programming where
Mhm.
they give out the Chromebooks, but not just to the students. Like they have
Their parents
Chromebooks
too.
for students, yeah, and they also give them out to the parents as well, so that the parents can, work from home or do whatever
Hmm.
they need to do to stay engaged. So maybe we can see how we might be able to put
Definitely.
all of that
And
together.
there's got to be some kind of risk management side of this too as well, so that things aren't just taken advantage of. But
Right.
we got to unfortunately, we got to think about that too.
Yeah. Okay, but no, that's definitely something. I'll go ahead and see who I can reach out to for that. But no, we'll definitely look into that. And that's a great idea. And I can't believe no one else has said that. So that's a great idea, though.
That's the beauty of diverse groups, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All right. So what do we think here, guys? Everything okay with engagement? Okay. And this is the last one. The quality of education goals. So whenever we combine these communication and education into one. I did end up taking a lot of these measurables came from literacy, and then I moved them to quality of education, just because I know that was something that we need to hone in on specifically. Um, so yeah, what do you all think? This is the last one I thought into, so some things might be out of order, but I feel like I thought pretty hard into this one because it was the last one.
I think perhaps a good long-term goal would be um, communication, just generally how to communicate. I think that's one of the bigger issues that individuals face is being able to manage their emotions in
Mm,
conversations and be able to facilitate a conversation successfully. I think that should be one of, as far as an education go, I think that should be one of them.
okay, maybe we can.
That's probably a long term goal because that's
Yeah, definitely. I think it would fall under those. I mean, I know people don't may not consider that when they think of mental emotional health, but I mean, emotional intelligence, that is communication.
that's a
So I would
big,
definitely
yeah,
add that to that mental and emotional health services aspect of it.
yes,
But no, I
yes,
definitely agree. Just yes, I mean, we have to be able to communicate what we're doing, what we're feeling, what we need, and I
right.
mean, it starts in the school system. It definitely does.
And we think we're communicating when we're talking, but often we're not.
Not at all. Not even a little bit. You're
Not,
just saying words. No one
yep,
understands you. No one understands your intention. We don't
yeah.
know. We don't know. Okay, but yeah, we'll definitely add that on to it. Okay. Okay. What about anything else though? You have any other ideas?
I think I'm good for now.
I think they're good goals. I'm wondering about the I mean, I'm interested to see how these are going to develop into SMART goals because I'm
Okay.
wondering how to gauge how are we gauging school work balance? Like, what does
Right.
that look like? They're all very important goals. I'm just wondering about measurability.
Yeah,
Okay, what do you think though? I mean, we can definitely, because I mean, that's something that I started working on a little bit last week, and it is difficult transferring some of these goals into SMART goals. So, what do you think then? Like, how could, how might we be able to make that transition?
I mean, that's something where maybe what are we looking for with school work balance? Can we define that goal a little bit more just for me?
Absolutely. So, for the schoolwork balance, from my understanding, it was just kind of about the parental involvement as well. Like, how do we have our parents involved with that school work balance? I mean, I feel like, we have a lot of students who come home and their parents can't help them with their schoolwork, so how can we fill in that gap as well as students who may not have the parental resources to not work. Like these students have to work. I mean, I had plenty of peers who were juniors and seniors and had to work their way through high school. So how can we fill in those gaps for those kinds of students?
Okay. Um, yeah, so I think we could definitely measure that by I think this how much and that'll help that's why relationship with school districts needs to be short term because that'll help us know um, if we are seeing a change in parent engagement.
Right.
Uh,
Right. But yeah, no, it's definitely these are definitely thinking pieces. So, we don't have to figure it all out now. But that is what I'll be working on in the next few weeks or so. So, if you all have any ideas or anything just comes to you as you're going through your day, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll be sending out emails, just seeing how people feel about various things, as we continue to do the research, and we continue to collaborate with everyone. So yeah, I mean, like I say, we don't have to figure it all out today, but these are the goals so far. And then, like I said, I will send out the slides, and that way you all can see the reminder for the goal, strategy, and objective. That way you can see the format that we're trying to put everything in. But yeah, I mean, these are
I,
thinkers.
Zoe, you sparked a thought in my head. I was just working on in one of my classes on determining the percentages of proper work-life balance. And what we were doing was measuring how much we had to measure how much time we're taking to do each thing, and then we're dividing that by our time available to us to determine the actual percentage that we are actually working, not just being at work, but actually working.
Mhm.
And the same thing for rest. Are we getting 8 hours of rest, or are we cutting into that to do other things? So when I'm thinking about your question on the school work-life balance, there are I forget the name of it. I think it's like the American Standard Time Usage or something to that. I'd have to look it up from my research work, but there's an average calculated average amount of time that people are doing different activities, and I wonder if we get a hold of that and use that maybe as a litmus test of sorts against what people are doing now. Maybe we can start to determine where they need to move in their workday in order to have a better balance.
Mhm. Hmm.
That sounds super interesting. I'd love if you could just I'd love
I,
to get
I
hold
do
of that.
EI work, so I kind of do that stuff all day long to figure out where the problems are. But yeah, I think if we could measure it as is practiced before um, any accommodations are made, and then we'd have a scale to measure against when we are suggesting different changes to see if those changes are in fact working or not.
You said American Standard Time use.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up now. American Time Use Survey. It is, and it's issued by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Um, and it's like the one that I have that I was able to pull up here. It literally took a measurement of um, the percent of employed persons working at home on days they worked, nearly doubled during COVID. Blah 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 blah. 40 42% of work, because that's going to affect it too. You know, people who are working remote versus people who go to work, drive time,
Mhm.
the hour they're able to supervise their children, and then their children, what are they doing when the parents aren't there, how much time is spent, all this kind of stuff. So I will send this to you um,
Please,
because it's a PDF release. It's like 28
please,
pages long.
please. I would love to look into that. And yeah, maybe we can definitely um, utilize that as we kind of figure out that how we can measure that
Yeah,
family work life balance.
here we go. I'm gonna put it in the chat.
Yeah, put in the chat.
Here we go.
Alrighty, moving on, moving on. Okay, so that's it on the equity indicators and measurements and goals for now. So that was our six equity indicators for communication and education. And so before I jump into the community listening sessions, I do just want to toggle back, just reminding everybody that those goals will be put into SMART goals, and we will have them in the format again of the goal, strategy, and objective. And that's kind of how they'll be actually written in the plan when it actually comes down to, putting them down on paper. Um, okay. Now, so, as I've previously mentioned, over the next few months, we will begin to conduct these community listening sections in these health equity zones pictured here. So, in the yellow zone, that represents the zip codes with high rates of COVID 19, low vaccination rates, and high social vulnerability index, or yeah. And then the blue zones represent additional areas of interest in terms of health disparities and barriers to everybody. To everyday goods and services. So the yellow ones were the original health equity zones that were defined before we even got into the plan. And then the blue ones were just recently added on just based off of some disparities that we've seen. And so, the health equity team will be going out into the communities and we'll be hosting multiple sessions within each health equity zone. Um, just throughout different points of the grant cycle. So we'll go out here, like I say, soon in July and August, just to kind of present this same information that we presented to you all with the indicators, the goals, the measurements, and kind of get their feedback, make sure we're on the right track in regards to what the community sees, because it's always the research says one thing and then the community says something different. So we definitely want to make sure that our goals are aligning with the needs of the community. um, and so that's why we'll be going out, presenting the information, that will come back, build the plan, go out, present the resources, come back, see how they feel about the resources. So yeah, we'll be doing these listening sessions pretty periodic throughout the grant period. Um, And so we're currently in the process of reaching out to various community organizations and institutions to secure these meeting spaces. And as of now, we're pretty flexible on the times and dates, just as we continue to make those connections with people. So if you or your organization, or maybe if you know a community center, or you have any connections with any type of community center or community organization that might be willing to host us, please definitely let us know. We've also been reaching out to people to get food donations, just because the county, we cannot buy food for people. Um, but if you all know any organizations or any restaurants that might be willing to donate some small little snacks or anything, please let us know. We'll be on the lookout for that as well. Okay. And so that's pretty much it on the community listening sessions. Like I said, we're still doing the research, we're still doing the works to get those secured and solidified. So if y'all have any resources or anything, please definitely let us know.
I will say when it comes to the provision of snacks, HEB has been very generous with us.
Okay.
So I would recommend contacting them, and they're very much about supporting the Texas communities.
Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Taking notes. All right. HEB. I love HEB. In Dallas, we don't have too many of them, but I went to school in Houston, and HEB has a special place in my heart. Very special place. Alrighty, y'all. I think that's just about it. Does anybody have any closing questions or remarks as we kind of wrap up things today?
I do have a question, Tanisha. Do you, for those that I reach out to for assistance, do you want me to funnel them towards you for connection on this
Yes,
point
please.
of contact? Okay,
Yes, please.
good deal.
Thank you for that. That was a great question. Okay, Zoe, Tanya, any closing remarks? That's okay. That's okay. Here's all the contact information. Y'all know that I will send out a follow up email with the slides, the meetings, and any other information we might need to share. I'll also send out that link that Charles dropped in the chat just for anybody who wasn't able to attend today. So yeah, if you guys have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Like I said, I will be working on putting these goals into SMART goals in the format that I just recently showed you all. So as I kind of come up with things, I'll be following up with everyone just to make sure we're all on the same page here. And like I say, if you have any questions or suggestions, definitely please don't hesitate to reach out, okay?
All righty.
Awesome. And while I have you all on here, I do want to remind y'all that we do have a Unity Council meeting coming up later on this month, and you all should be receiving a reminder about that sometime this week.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, everybody, have a great day. Happy
All right. It's
Tuesday.
good seeing y'all
You as
again.
well. Happy Tuesday.
Happy
Bye.
Tuesday. Bye bye.